This conference will now be recorded.
I'm going to begin recording this so that I have it for future reference. I hope nobody has an objection. It is a public meeting and I think it might be worthwhile to have it recorded. What time is it now? It's 5:06. So we're going to begin in a moment. I have a couple of people coming in. I just want to see who they are. Okay, while I'm waiting for the identifications, the basic ground rules are that I will ask, I don't think I have to mute you as you're coming in. I could possibly mute you. Obviously, if everybody tries to talk at once, it's a Zoom. So what I would ask, it's going to be harder for people who don't have a camera, but people who have a camera, if you raise your hand, I will see you, and then I can know that you have something to say and I can call on you. If you don't have a camera or if you're on the phone, you may have to start saying something, but if there's somebody else who is speaking at that time, or if 2 or 3 people want to speak simultaneously, then I will just say, all right, let me, let's have so-and-so first, and let's have Jim Dodge first, and, then we'll get to you. So we do it that way. So I have Judy Chapman. And caller number 7, I still don't know who you are. So I know the callers as Peter Spots, Lauren Lavelle, Lydia Pollard, Phyllis Desati, Katrin Kaminsky, Susan Warner, Mark Piaget. Is there anybody else who is on the phone? I could mute them. Who? Caller 9 is coming in. Again, I'll ask if whoever just joined us by phone, can you identify yourself? So Charlie, what's the protocol? If, again, I can just mute them, I suppose. And then you can't really participate unless you tell me who you are.
Sorry, what's the protocol for what?
If somebody doesn't identify themselves at the meeting, the problem is because we are virtual, I can't see your face and you're on the telephone anyway. So I can't see you to tell who you are.
So if they're not willing to identify themselves, you could just push them out of the meeting, or you could just keep them muted. It's up to you. Obviously,
Okay.
they shouldn't speak without at least identifying themselves.
Okay, so I have 2 callers on the phone who have not identified themselves. One just joined us, so, and one has been here for a bit. So I am going to mute caller 7 since I can't, I don't have a name from you. And caller 9 who just joined us by phone. All right,
I should have our picture up there.
okay, so I'm gonna mute caller 9 because again, I don't have a name. All right, so we should start this.
So exactly, and if someone's not willing to identify themselves, just mute them. That's that.
Okay. So I think we should begin the meeting, and I will just ask if you're not speaking at any particular time, if you can mute yourself. It can sometimes help because of background noises. Okay. All right, so I think if I believe that everybody can unmute themselves if they choose. If not, there is the chat function. If you send me a message, I see Dave Cook says his mic went dead. So he might be, if you're one of the callers in here, then tell me. There's a chat function up at the top towards the right-hand side. You can put in a message in the chat function if you think I haven't gotten to you. So this is a hearing for the Citizen Petition, which has been submitted in accordance with state law. It is properly submitted. It has the correct number of signatures. The signatures are verified. And as such, it is required that we present it to town meeting on the warrant. And therefore, because it's a zoning item, the planning board has to have a hearing on it, which is the purpose of this hearing. There's a question from Isaac asking if I can explain what the process is for this item, including how the planning board, okay, we'll compile a report. Okay, so the process is that because it's a citizen petition from Tina McCarthy, she's going to do her presentation about what triggered this petition, why she feels it's valid and should be passed, why accepted at town meeting, and which means I will turn over to her as presenter so that she can share her screen. She has a presentation, and concluding the meeting will end at a certain point, which just means really that the public comment period will end. But I'm asking well, actually right now, I do have a quorum. I was hoping that Josh would attend, and I was hoping that Kim would attend as well. But I don't know that they're here yet. So if we can, the planning board then has to prepare a report, which will be accompanying the warrant at town hall. It will be written, and I probably will wind up reading it as well. It's not going to be a long report. It includes our recommendations for how this would then proceed through town meeting, what is required for passage, and so on. So at this point, okay. All right. So I think I just want to turn this over to Tina at this time. I'm going to, let's see, I'm going to make Tina the presenter. I gotta find you. There you are. Okay. So I'm going to make Tina the presenter. I will say, okay.
I think it's working, Amy. Here we go.
Okay.
Okay. So on my end, it says that I'm sharing my screen. Are you guys seeing it?
Yes, I see it, and I imagine everybody else does. It says the proposed amendment to Worthington zoning bylaw section 5.1 dimensional requirements.
That's right.
Yes, all good. And if you want to see it full screen, there's a little icon. You see some icons on the right, and you should be able to increase it to full screen if you want.
Okay, so I'll get started then. My name's Tina McCarthy. I'm, as Amy said, the author of a Citizen's Petition warrant article, which will be voted on the upcoming town meeting. And thank you for having this meeting and giving me a chance to explain the background of this article, why I wrote it, and why I submitted it to town meeting. I've lived in Worthington since 2017. I moved here to live with my partner, Alex Feinstein, who's in this right here. And he grew up here. His parents live here. So Alex and I have been planning for several years to build a home on a second lot that's owned by his parents. And we had initial conversations with the town, and they indicated that it was possible at first, but when we applied to subdivide the lot, it wasn't approved. And then we realized that our lot which has 350 feet of frontage and 10 acres, would be buildable in any other town in the state. We just decided to research more about the history of why Worthington has a 400-foot frontage requirement. So that's how we got into it. We've been looking to find a house for our family in town for quite a while now and haven't been able to do that. So that's what spurred us to submit this to town meeting. So I will start moving through my slides then. Here we go. So I want to start with just a little reference to historic development patterns in Worthington. As you can see from this 1873 map, there are the majority of residences in town are in densely settled village centers. And then there are outlying farms spaced at large intervals, which doesn't really correspond in either respect to the current zoning of 400 feet for everywhere. This is a comparative zoning analysis that I prepared. I looked at all of the towns that border Worthington and to see what their frontage requirements were. And as you can see, Worthington's frontage requirement is 400 feet. And that's double the largest requirements of any of our neighbors. So in order to find out what I'm really talking about with this Warrant article, what I needed to know more about the existing conditions in town, what parcels have what frontage, and how many of them are there. So I did a survey using assessor's records for the town as well as GIS data, and I surveyed 594 developed lots in town. And with that data, I compiled these charts and graphs. I found that 42% of the current built lots in town do not conform to the 400-foot requirement. And then I also assembled this residential units by decade chart, which is just kind of shows you the patterns of development in Worthington since the 1950s. There was a big spike in the 80s, and ever since then it's been declining. The line that you see running through this graph represents houses that were built that don't conform to the frontage requirement, according to my study. So you can see that in the 1980s, of course, before then, the law didn't exist, right? I just put it there for reference. There were houses built that conformed to the 400, had that or more, and there were also houses built with less. In the 1980s, 39 houses were built that did not conform, that had less than 400 feet. And in the pursuant decades, this continued at dwindling numbers, but nonetheless, it has continued ever since. And I also found by looking at the town of Worthington's zoning bylaws that there was this section 13 for flexible development. And for those of you who haven't seen this, it's essentially, and I've simplified it a bit here, but it's a provision that allows a developer that's creating more than 2 building lots to get a reduction in the frontage requirement with certain conditions.
Tina, can I ask you to hang 1 sec? So I think Helen, Sharon, are you having difficulty seeing the presentation?
Oh, sorry. Yes, I didn't mean to disrupt it. Yes, I'm not able to see it. So just I was asking. No. I can see people's faces and so on, but just couldn't see the presentation.
You don't see this screen being shared?
No. But I'm doing this on my phone, so maybe that's the issue. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Okay.
Helen, try swiping to the right.
Okay, thank you.
Did that work?
Well,
not so far, but I'll continue. Thank you very much. Again, apologies.
Okay.
That's quite all right. I'm sorry that you can't see it. But anyways, this this frontage exception that's granted to developers encourages them to build new roads in town, essentially, and allows a reduced frontage along those new roads. I was made not aware of this, but this is the solution that was offered to me by folks in the town. It was suggested that we should build a road on our property in order to get enough frontage in order to subdivide it and build a house there. And it just struck me as kind of astounding that I wasn't allowed to build a single family house on a parcel that's big enough to build a road through and subdivide. That's an aside. It was one of the motivating factors where I felt like, maybe it's not my particular circumstance that's wrong in this case. It might be the zoning in the town that's wrong. So moving on. Worthington's affordable housing crisis. If any of you have tried to buy a house in the last year, if you haven't, I can report that it is an abysmal situation at present. House values have skyrocketed even beyond what I'm showing here in this graph. Since COVID, things have gotten really out of control. My real estate agent told me recently that she has not had a single offer accepted on a house anywhere in this area that hasn't been a cash offer. There's just so many bidders, and the market is really overheated. So this is some of the pressure that our family was feeling directly, and the reason why it's so important for us to be able to build on the land that we have. And this is just a little national context so that no one feels singled out in Worthington. It's not just Worthington, it's everywhere. The housing situation in this country right now it's not good. It really jeopardizes the ability of normal people. And when I say normal, I say 2 working adults who are fully employed to be able to provide a home for their family. And these are some maps from the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission. The one on the left shows population trends in the area over the decade from 2000 to 2010. You can see that Worthington's population dropped by 9%. And strangely, over this same period, the available housing increased by 8.1%. So somehow there's this divorce between the number of people who live here and the number of houses that we have. So it's not that we don't have houses being built, it's that they really perhaps aren't being built for people who live here, or if they are, there are far fewer people in them, perhaps.
Yeah, there's curious.
So this is a screenshot just to give you an example of what I'm talking about with the current housing market. This is a screenshot from realtor.com taken on April 17th of the available houses for sale in Worthington. The median value is $745,000. And the median household income in Worthington is $76,250. And that math doesn't work. It doesn't work for us. It doesn't, I imagine, work for a lot of people. So here we're back to my Warrant article, the impact of the frontage change. So my proposal is to reduce the frontage to 280 feet. And I created this little graph to show you the impact of what this means for existing developed lots in town. So at the far left, you have if the frontage requirement were reduced to 200, as it is for the surrounding towns, that would create 250 parcels in town that would be eligible for further subdivision under that reduced frontage requirement. And as you can see, as we proceed to the right, all the way up to 350, which I think is the smallest available reduction that could be made, that would only impact 26 lots in town currently. And that only includes lots that were not eligible to be subdivided under the current requirements, but would then become eligible with the reduced requirements, if I'm explaining that clearly. So as you can see, the 280 is right in the middle. 60, it's my estimate that about 61 developed parcels would be newly eligible for subdivision under that frontage requirement, which is about 10% of the built lots in town, which seemed to me to be a reasonable number. And I also got that number from the existing exception for the frontage requirement under flexible development. So I have some points here in closing, just saying that the town of Worthington has the highest median house value of any surrounding community. Given the lack of affordable housing, the proposed bylaw change would decrease the required frontage from 400 to 280 feet, enabling more homes to be built using the existing roadways and infrastructure of the town. This reduction is in line with that available for the creation of 2 or more building lots under Section 13 flexible development. This change would make it easier for existing landowners to create new lots without extensive subdivision and building new roads. Reducing the frontage requirement to 280 feet would still leave Worthington with the highest frontage requirement of any surrounding town. The continued rural character of all of these surrounding towns supports the argument that reducing the frontage requirement in Worthington will not have a negative effect on its rural character. And finally, this is the actual text of the change, which is a very minimal change in text. It just swaps the number 280 for the number 400. So with that, I am going to hand things back to Amy. If you'll give me just a moment to figure out how to do that. Oh, no, I don't want to leave the meeting, no.
Go to where the people are and you go to Amy. And I think if you go to me and you click next to me and you, oh, I might be able to do it, make presenter.
Here we go. It's
Okay.
coming to you now.
Okay, so here I am. All right.
Here you go.
I do have a couple of questions that came up from a few people. So let me just look at this. So I'm going to do the first one first, which is that David Cook asked whether you had sought a variance to be able to build the houses on the 2 lots, and if not, why not? And I just want to answer, before Tina answers that, I just want to make a statement that I am not fond of granting variances except for very small things, because if we continue to grant variances, what exactly would be the point of having a zoning law if we're just going to let everybody have a variance, a variance, a variance, a variance? That's not to say that I'm opposed to it, but I think we need to think about it. So, but I will ask, so the question is for Tina, did you apply for a variance? And if not, why not?
Thanks. Yeah. So we did not fill out an official application for a variance. We inquired about that, but we were told that we could not get a variance for this because of the merger clause. And if I'm explaining something incorrectly, Amy, feel free to correct me when I'm done. But my understanding of it was that because Alex's parents owned 2 lots, they were purchased at separate times in the 1980s, but they were adjoining and they were under common ownership. And because of that, you can't subdivide them without creating not 1, but 2 nonconformities, because in our case, both lots were pre-existing 350 feet of frontage. So we couldn't separate them without creating 2 nonconformities, and that was too much to ask for in a variance.
Right. Basically, at the time that Alex's parents bought the properties, the 2 lots, the zoning requirement, I think, was 200 feet. And so each of their lots was 350 feet. But when you have a change of zoning law where they increase the frontage, if the same person owns 2 lots, the doctrine of merger comes into effect, which means that the 2 lots are merged together as one, giving them 700 feet, which satisfies the 400 feet requirement and gives an extra 300 feet, which is not enough for a building lot any longer. So it was not possible to split it down the center. If they did that, that would have required 2 variances because we would have been creating 2 non-conforming lots. And I'll be honest, I was advised by town council that that would not be a good thing to do, that we should not be creating 2 non-conforming lots. We shouldn't even be creating 1 non-conforming lot, but they definitely said that we should not create 2. So that was a reason for us not granting their request for an APR. I also have a question from Okay, from a couple of people. So from Keith and Cynthia Manley, they are asking, Tina, do your numbers include farm APRs?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Maybe you can explain what that is, Amy?
I don't know that I can, but Keith and Cynthia, so many people have joined now. Let me just make this smaller. Let me see where you are. You can unmute yourselves if you'd like and explain your question. There you are. You are unmuted. So why don't you explain the question a little better?
Yeah, the APR land is that which was turned over or sold the rights, building rights to the state or federal government
Oh, I
in
see.
this town.
I see.
And most of what you see for anything for open land along 112 or 143 is all APR land. Whether most of the people in town realize that or not, I don't know. As well as most of the other farmland on the south end of town is all APR land. I don't believe there's any left that is not.
So I can explain to you how I got my numbers, and I think it will answer your question. So what I did was I looked exclusively at lots that had buildings on them, residential buildings, not shops, not, outbuildings, but residential buildings. And I looked at frontage. And where I saw a lot that was in common ownership with an adjoining lot, like say you have a parcel that's residential, but you have an adjoining lot, and that could be an agricultural lot, or I don't know anything about that lot, but it's adjoining and it's under common ownership. If it was under common ownership with an adjacent parcel, I considered the frontage of the whole, and I would consider that parcel to be unaffected by what I'm doing because they're already eligible for subdivision due to owning so much land.
Which leads me to the other side of that is that some of that is going to be non-buildable because of what they've already done with that open land.
I'm not sure that has anything to do with the frontage. I guess I'm not sure what you're asking.
If part of that frontage is APR land, it can't be built on, period, because they've already pledged not to build on it.
Yeah, so that's why when I did my numbers and I put on my slides that all I was looking at is houses that exist and the frontage that they have currently. And
Yep. So some of them will be.
So some of them will be an APR piece of property.
Yep.
That's all we were wondering. We didn't know if you had left them out, but if that's how you did it, then we're going to assume that some of the houses you were looking at with the contiguous property possibly are some of those APR farmlands.
yeah, I didn't.
We just thought some of your numbers were high. That's all.
Yeah,
There's
so that
no way
would
to
just
figure that
reduce your
out,
number, if anything.
Right.
Yep.
It would reduce the number of houses to be built.
Yes.
Yeah, right. The number of houses that are capable of being built in town.
But I think when you present it, if you had a truer number to it because of that, I think a lot more people might be calmer as far as changing our frontage, realizing that there are a lot of properties already that won't be able to be built on anyway, as they currently stand.
I'm also, okay, if you're happy with the answers you've received so far, Caleb, hang on a sec. I've got two other questions first. So the next one was from Helen Sharon Pollard, who said her concern isn't the 61 potential new houses. It is how this would open the town to development.
So if I may, Tina, thank you very much. I think you did a really excellent job presenting and doing the research on this. And I appreciate that you've kind of opened our eyes to some degree as to what we have available in the town. I wish my mom were on the call with us today. This is Julia Sharon. She was on the Board of Selectmen for a very long time in the town, but certainly at the time when the subdivision bylaws were put into town, and back in the 80s, as you did your research, this is when the subdivision bylaws were actually created. I think zoning was only initiated across the state at that point. And the reason the 400 foot of frontage was because the Tyler farm, which is now known as Chucklebrook, was being sold and it was being divided. And you can see that there's several smaller subdivisions on that property. And I think the town was really concerned that there would be a great number of houses built, and there was a concern about changing the rural character, which is always near and dear to my heart. I love this town. I wish we could go back in time and live the way we used to live here a long time ago, but obviously we can't, and time marches on. So, again, back in the 80s and 90s, the town went through something called 2020, where they were taking a vision of what we would see in 2020, which is now where we are today, right? And what we wanted to preserve here, the rural character, the sense of community, the rural beauty, the nature that we have here, conserving lands for future generations, for conservation and so on. And you see at that time, a lot of land went into conservation. A lot of the farmland went, and a lot of the forest land went as well. So again, this is my concern. What the 400 foot of frontage does, and maybe 350 is a better number, I don't really know, but what the 400 foot of frontage does is it keeps us from having large subdivisions here in the town, because it's very expensive to build roads. So 400 feet of frontage means that it's harder for a builder to come in and create a number of spec houses on a parcel of land that such as a farm or any open space that we have. So that's my concern, is that if we were to drop this down, we would be open to that. And I'm not unsympathetic to the thought of the affordable housing, because certainly you want to be able to live in the town that you grew up in. But I don't see dropping the lot size down to 280 feet would actually create the result that you're looking for, because I don't think the price of the lot would go down at all. A building lot is a building lot is a building lot, and so who would benefit from this are large landowners in town. And full disclosure, we do have quite a bit of property. It'd be great to be able to make millions off of the land that we have, but it's not something I would ever want to do, because I really love this place and it really means a lot to me. So, and again, congratulations on this. I just think that this is a really big step for the town, especially after 40 years of town meetings saying the opposite, that we wanted to keep the rural look and feel to the town. I think we need to keep that in mind. And yeah, I think that going before the ZBA actually does make sense, to see if you can get the ZBA to grant you something on your property. It's not unheard of. Ted Porter did it for the house that's built right behind the church. It's not unprecedented that the town will look at something like that. Thank you for letting hear me out.
Yeah, sure. It's a very valid concern. The reason that Alex's parents moved here, the reason that Alex and I want to live here, is because precisely of the character of the town that you're talking about. I just want to point out that the flexible development section of the zoning bylaw that exists currently already allows developers to build houses with if you average the frontage reduction that is available per lot, it's 270 feet of frontage per lot that they are already allowed to do. And honestly, I think the flexible development provision is a lot more appealing to developers, because you can then have different amounts of frontage for different properties, and you're not like locked into a certain amount of frontage. You just have to have a total that's kind of big enough, and it averages down to 280 feet per lot. So all I'm asking is that the existing small landowners in town be able to have the same benefits that any developer would have if they came here, that we be allowed to also divide our property so that parents can give their children land. That's what we're asking for.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I think I was on the planning board when the flexible subdivision went in. I don't believe that's the correct interpretation of it, Tina, but maybe so. I'd have to take a look at it again. It was meant to keep the 400 feet of frontage, but to allow for a flexible plan so that the more open space could be set aside, right? So there were set asides for that. So you're right. The building lot itself could be smaller if the set aside took into account the 3 acres and the 400 feet of frontage that was there. So I'm not, I think you need to take a look at that.
Hang on one
Thank you.
There are several people with questions. So
Yep, sure, sorry.
and
Yep.
this actually runs into one. Kevin O'Connor had asked, can we go back to your interpretation of flexible development? And Kevin, do you want to speak to your question? So this is the order which we're going to have. Hang on. It's going to be Kevin, and then Caleb Harris, and then David Cook, and then Isaac. Oh,
Yes,
and then,
I'm going to riff off where Helen just left off, and I was active in reviewing the flexible development amendment to the zoning because it seemed enticing, and it is. And I don't know who is advising you on how it works, but your description is not how it works. So it does not allow for any reduction of frontage except within the plot. And it requires not a lessening of length of road frontage, but for each unit up to 6, you increase by 0.7 times 400. So ironically, your lot at 350 plus 350 at 700, you would need 680 to apply for and probably get flexible development. And it is written such not to encourage developers, which is the same thing as what was written for the subdivision, which requires granite curbing and yada, yada, yada. Flexible development encourages almost a condo plan where the developer, one homeowner, allows others to join them. And each time there is an additional home to be built, you add 280 feet. So 400, the example in the zoning goes up to 1120 for 6 houses, I believe. So the frontage never reduces it reduces for each house once it's established, but it doesn't reduce it from 400. It adds 280 for each house that goes on it. So it was carefully written, and Helen, you might remember this, to include water conservation, could be a communal septic. There needed to be more or less a homeowner's plan. And so that's what has turned people off, that it requires some work. It requires some work to read it and understand it. It's written in planning legalese. So I think I don't know who told you not to apply for ZBA. I'm not sure if you would be willing to look at the flexible development as a way out of your conundrum, but I see it is. And the only other stringent requirement is that you have to leave 50% of the land in conservation, meaning you don't touch it. So you do need to file a plan, and I don't think the plan includes building plans, just site plans and how you plan to do this. But and I believe it goes through the planning board, not through the ZBA. So I think it takes some reading. I just read through the critical parts myself, and I started this by saying we had land we thought this would make sense for, but like Helen, we've decided not to do it.
the next question is from Caleb Harris.
Hi, this is Caleb Harris at 487 Old Post Road. This isn't a question really, but I'm not sure how you define affordability, but there are reasonably priced houses that come up for sale in Worthington, and an example of one is right next door to us this fall. A small home sold in the $200,000 range, and had open houses and bidders and came in and sold. And I don't think I think the presentation was very skewed in that regard. I think affordability can be found in Worthington. That's all I want to say as a comment.
Okay. Let's see, Isaac, you have a question?
Yeah, well, I would like to say a number of things, but I wanted to just kind of add to what focus specifically on the flexible development. I think actually first I want to start by thanking Tina for doing such a thoroughly researched job and putting it together into such a coherent presentation. I think that's just a great use of everyone's time, and so thank you for doing that, Tina. I think I think that as far as flexible development goes, I think that the part about the road is that relates to Tina's case is that because of the nature of their frontage, they would have to subdivide their lots in such a way that one of them that they had a shared driveway. Because they're not, each lot has to have at least 400 feet on, if it's on Starkweather Hill Road, it has to have at least 400 feet. So so I think that may be where you get the idea that this requirement, the flexible development requires road building, because in some cases it does require that, as I read it, that the people who are utilizing this provision build on a shared driveway, and part of that is in the, as what Kevin describes, one of the goals here was to encourage conservation. And so obviously if the houses are clustered on a shared driveway, it means more land can be set aside as open space. I think that if the flexible, Helen and Kevin both spoke to the goals of the flexible development provisions, and I certainly, it sounds as though they weren't written to favor developers. But if that's what's actually happening in reality, then people, they weren't written to favor developers. They were written to allow for development in a way that also encouraged conservation. And so, if what's happening functionally is that it's only realistic for developers to utilize these provisions, then perhaps an answer here that might satisfy you and the goal of, and also the goal of conserving the town is to amend the flexible development provisions to make them more friendly to people who are just adding one or two homes. I should also note that if we amend the bylaw to lower the frontage requirement 280 feet, then under flexible development, people would be able to build with less than 200 feet. So that would, because they would be able to take advantage of the 70% reduction for additional lots. So this isn't just the effect of this would be to have additional lots below 200 feet, which perhaps is a good thing, but it's not. This wouldn't be the lower bound of new lot sizes under the amendment.
Okay, hang on one sec. Just a little housekeeping. I need to ask. We have two callers who recently joined us. One I think is Charlene Viardi.
Yes, I finally got in. Thank you so much.
Okay, so that's 11 is Charlene, and somebody else just joined by phone as well. Can I ask you to?
It's me, Josh Clark. I finally got it all worked out.
Okay. All right. So the next comment I have actually is from Dave Cook, and I don't know, Dave, do you want to speak it yourself? Do you want to make the comment yourself? I can read it. He did say, echoing other concerns, this change is assured to open the town to, oops, it just shifted. Okay, here we go. To wide-ranging development. We saw this in our former residential community. I do want to make one statement about, oh, his mic went dead. Sorry about that, Dave. I do want to make one statement about things like that. And it's basically that we have a section of town that is that has a public water district, but much of town does not. So even if you reduce the frontage, it doesn't necessarily mean that any particular lot will be it can be classified as a building lot, but can you build on it? Because like my property, for instance, I have to have my private well because I don't have town water, I'm too far away. And of course I have to have my septic system. And there are zoning requirements, there are building requirements on the distance between my septic system and my well. And so just because I might have even 400 feet of frontage, if I only have 2 acres, it may very well not prove to be a buildable lot. even if it is classified as a building lot. So I think people, some people who maybe live in the part of town that does have town water, sort of, you kind of forget that much of town does not. And the sections of town that do not have town water, it's so much easier to have rampant development when you have town sewer and town water, because you just hook up to the pipes and you're good to go. You can plop your house down whatever size you want, which is why you get like the McMansions in certain areas where if the zoning code says you can only build to within 16 feet of your borders, they build to within 16 feet of their borders because they don't have to worry about having to or a well. It's all piped in. So that makes a lot of stuff easier in other places. So I'm not too sure. I understand the concern. We would have more development, but I'm not too sure that we'd have rampant development. And there was a question from Susan Scharbach. She said that she found that the frontage was changed to 400 feet, which could be when the Chucklebrook sale Helen referenced occurred. And it was in 1980. Actually, I had, it's downstairs. It's September 25th, I think, of 1980. It was voted in at a special town meeting, which was attended by 51 people. The vote was 39-12, if I remember, in favor of changing the frontage to 400 feet. And we'll pass on for that a sec, but she said, perhaps there's a statement in the town records that will clarify the reasoning in 1980. Well, I have to say that I today, first Katrin went through it, the planning board minutes, and then I went through the planning board minutes to see if maybe there was anything she missed, because there is a gap. Their planning board minutes go up to, I think it's 1979, and there's a gap between then and 1983. So there are no minutes that I can find from the planning board that might have explained why this was done. So I actually don't know what the reason was. Do you, Pam Thompson, you guys will be next, but Tina, did you want to say anything to any of these other points?
No, other than, as you just said, I also looked at the town records, but I looked at the select board records. And although 1980 was at first missing completely, I was able to locate it. It was just misfiled within the larger file. It was stuck in the middle of 1982. It was like a weird time warp. So I found it, but in the select board minutes, of course, maybe they wouldn't have said anything, but they did discuss the special town meeting that they were organizing. They said it was to change to decommissioned streets. Nobody ever mentioned the frontage requirement at the select board. So that's all I have to say.
Yeah, the decommissioning streets would have been something the select board deals with. A change in zoning law, the planning board would have put forward, which is why the planning board minutes became important, but Katrin could not find them, nor could I. Pam Thompson, I think you folks have a question, but don't, yeah, there you go.
Thank you. I'm Mark Shapiro. I live with Pam on Conwell Road. I want to thank Tina for bringing up such an important issue. And what I keep feeling is that it is such an important issue that it needs to be considered in a more comprehensive way. If the goal is indeed affordable housing, I do think that Caleb's comment about, I think it was Caleb who commented that maybe, or I'm not sure it was Caleb, but that we would really need to look at all the towns to see whether a building lot is a building lot is a building lot, number one. And I think that this issue of affordable housing really needs to be considered along with multi-density zoning, the ADU, and frontage. And frontage is only one component of this picture, which is quite complex and really fateful for our town. I mean, we've been living under this regime for, what is it, 40 years or something? So to change it is maybe really necessary, but it also needs to be a very deliberative process that involves the whole town. I think to do it in a manner of bringing a petition up, having a meeting of this kind, and then voting it on town meeting really doesn't give adequate respect to the complexity and importance of that process. So I would suggest that this be considered in the context of all these issues. I think it was really, for me, like what Tina said, of looking at those old maps and showing this multi-density picture of the way a rural town at 100 years ago might have been, is really, for me, is much more interesting as an idea of creating these multi-density zones where you could have some less frontage in some areas and more frontage in others. I think that's what some of this conservation easements accomplishes. But as I say, I think this is one component of a much bigger picture, and it needs to be considered in totality.
Yeah. I will actually speak to that just a little bit, in that that is actually something the planning board had been discussing and will continue to discuss, regardless of whether this passes or not. But the other issue, the one thing I did want to point out was that there was a push this year throughout Massachusetts to increase housing density. The governor pushed through some amendments to the law allowing for simple majority, not 2/3 majority of the vote, to enable certain zoning changes. And the zoning, it does not specifically mention frontage, but it mentions dimensional requirements such as lot size. I'm trying to remember what the various other parts of it were, but there is a dearth of affordable housing in Massachusetts. And they documented that the Massachusetts average house price was amongst the highest in the nation. It had risen faster than many other places. And they wanted to increase the possible density, increase the density of housing. We do not have a public transit hub anywhere near us, but there are whole sets of requirements, new requirements for cities that have any kind of public transportation hubs. So whether it's a bus stop, a bus station, a bus terminal, a train station, we don't have any of those, and none of this applies to us. But the push is on in the state to increase housing density any way they can. And there were many conflicting opinions issued about this. The Housing Commission, whose presentation I listened to, said, you know, as far as changing the requirements from a 2/3 to a simple majority vote, their quote was, if it increases housing density, it's a yes. But that doesn't actually seem to be true. However, it is impossible to actually get an answer on that at this point, because the governor disagrees with the legislature, the Housing Commission disagrees with the Attorney General, who disagrees with the Housing Commission. So there is nobody who will answer a question. When I ask the Housing Commission, they say, ask your town council. When I ask the Attorney General, they just don't call me back. So, you know, it's like, and some of the things, like basically the criteria, the deciding group, the group that would state whether this is subject to simple majority or 2/3, is, in this particular case, would be the planning board. And it's like, great, thank you so much. You've put all of this on us to decide with not that much guidance. But town council has indicated to me that it's supposed to be, that he believes it's 2/3 majority that would have to carry this. However, he also said, what about the fact that lowering the frontage could increase housing density, which is what they want to do. He said, well, that could be grounds for the appeal. I'm not sure who you'd be appealing to. All of this, when this is voted on at town meeting, if it passed, it would go to the Attorney General with documentation of what the voting was. Somebody's got a lot of, hang on, Caleb. Somebody's got a lot of noise in their background, and I wonder if they could do something to lessen that. But it would go. Yeah.
Sorry, this is Josh Clark. The noise isn't here, but I'm curious. What is the code to mute yourself on phone again? Can you tell me?
I believe it's *6, but Amy, you could just mute everybody. And
Oh,
you can
okay.
*6 to unmute yourself if you need to speak.
Okay.
How do you unmute yourself? How do you unmute yourself?
*6 again.
*6 again.
Okay, thank you. Thank
I'm
you.
going to mute everybody for the moment. Okay, so you're all muted, but I will.
This is Joel. I want to raise my hand.
Okay, hang on a sec. Just hold on a second. So anyway, so this is a push from the state to increase housing density. And this was probably part of why Tina felt she could bring this up and possibly it would qualify for the simple majority passage, because the opinion poll that we took of town, the simple majority of townspeople agreed to change the frontage, but did not agree on change it to what. 47%, I think, of the town said leave it as is. So that was part of the reason, I think, why she also may have felt that this could fly now. But clearly it's going to be an issue. Or, it may or may not. It's up to the townspeople to vote at town meeting. So let's see. First, before you, Joel, I know Caleb Harris had something he wanted to say, so let me go to him.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment again that, these complexities of, future development or whatever issues like that, haven't they really been addressed in a comprehensive way with the flexible development provisions? Haven't we already been down that road?
I would say yes and no. I think yes, Kevin has pointed out that the flexible development is not meant to be as complex as it appears, but it is not quite as simple. I mean, obviously the simplest way to be able to build another house is to do what's known as curiously as an ANR, an approval not required, which means a subdivision approval not required. But when you have sufficient frontage, you can divide your property. You don't need approval as a subdivision because you have the required frontage and the required acreage. And then the second part of that you have just divided your property into can then be a building lot. That is the simplest way and it is the least cost. The flexible development does require some planning. It does require some work. It requires a lot of considerations. I mean, it can be more of a handful than somebody might really want to take on, which is probably why we have so many non-conforming lots, because people got variances. But as I said, I'm not against variances, but I'm not fond of doing them, only because why do we have zoning laws if we're going to grant a variance to everybody? Why on earth do we have a zoning law? But that's my question to myself. And, to my empty room as I walk around my house saying like, well, but why do we have zoning laws if we're going to do that? But anyway, I digress. Let me move on to one thing first. So Joel has a question. Can we go to Joel?
Yes, I just wanted to make a comment to underscore, I think, Mark Shapiro's point. And it has to do with the complexity of the overlapping issues that are raised by any one change causes many other changes in the whole view of the town. And so this is a wonderful thing, Amy, that you are organizing here. And my hope is that it will be the first of many such meetings, whatever happens at the town meeting. In order to avoid building the airplane in mid-flight, I would love the town, since a lot has happened since 1980, the citizens of the town of all different kinds, ages and interests and everything else, need perhaps to begin talking about what do we want Worthington to look like, be like 10, 15, 20, 30 years from now. Not just recall what it once was, which we all love, but how would we like it to be later? And based on that shared understanding of what we look for, what we in the largest number want, organize complex plans that can bring it about, so that you would then answer Tina's perfectly beautifully described question in the context of the larger issue of where do we want to be 20, 30 years from now? What do we want it to look like? I'll just add one more thing. I grew up in a tiny agricultural village in the middle of the Garden State, New Jersey, halfway between Philadelphia and New York. And because there was a lack of planning, development took over in that particular township, which was remarkably like Worthington. And within about 15 years, a township of 5,000 people grew, catch your breath, to 5 million. Now, that won't happen in Worthington, but I think some sense of where we would like to be down the road, now is the time to ask that question and then apply the plan to the answers to that question. Thanks for the chance.
Okay, thank you. I just want to read a couple of comments, and one of them is actually a question for Tina. And then Isaac wanted to speak again, and certainly he can. But so Gabriel Unger and Allison Priest asked whether, I'm not sure if I pronounced that right, I hope so, asked whether there will be a way to view the opening presentation after this hearing. I know you have it as a PDF, Tina. Let's see, okay.
Yeah, I do have it as a PDF. I have provided that PDF to Amy. I am more than happy for her to distribute it to anybody that wants it via email. Additionally, I've printed copies myself, and today I dropped a stack of them off at the Worthington store. So if you wanted to swing by the store and just grab one, I'll try to replenish them as soon as I notice they're depleted. So
I'm happy to distribute them through the town website. If just send me a copy.
Okay, you know what? I can forward you a copy, Charlie. I was also going to say if anybody wanted to email me at the planning board, I'd be glad to send it to them. But sure, I'll give it to Charlie and he can make it available on the website, and then you can see it.
I'll be sending the warrant out this weekend anyway, and I can get that out to everybody in town at the same time.
There is a comment from Helen Sharon Pollard just saying A&Rs eat space and don't conserve land. No, they don't, because generally speaking, people do an A&R because they want to create a separate lot, which will be a building lot, and they sell it to somebody who will now build something on it, usually a house. So that is true. It does not conserve any land. It definitely doesn't, but it's the easiest way. It would have been the easiest way for Tina and Alex to be able to build their house on Alex's parents' land if they could have done an A&R and split it. But to conform with the 400 feet of frontage, they would have had to split the 700-foot lot into 400 feet and 300 feet. And that, to be 100 feet shy of what it should be, is actually a lot to ask for. And I was advised by town council, the planning board was advised that we could not do that. We could not create a non-conforming lot. Of course, as people have said, perhaps the ZBA could have overridden that.
Yeah, if I could speak to that for just a sec. I just want to put out there that as far as conserving land goes, in the case of our property, where we have, a very large property, 10 acres, and we want to build one house currently, and we want to farm, and we'll have an agricultural use for the rest of it. The way that Worthington zoning is now, we have to build a road through our own property. And in my mind, that is not conservation at all, but that's what we're being forced to do. And we don't want to do that. We don't like that option. We want there to be a different option.
Right. Okay, so Kevin has mentioned, I don't know if people are looking at the chat box, but Kevin has mentioned the Worthington Open Space and Recreation Plan Update 2006 on the town website would be a good start to Joel's idea of a review. And Helen has mentioned that the Connection 2020 plan the town put together is a great place to begin this discussion. And actually, I know where the 2020 plan is because when I was looking for the minutes, I found it. I didn't look through it because it wasn't pertinent to this hearing today, but I know exactly where it is. And yes, the planning board should look at it. Okay, so at this time, where are we now? We're at 6:10 p.m. Is there anybody who has, do I have one more caller? I think the callers are going to be not quite the death of me, but the bookkeeping death of me. So I have another caller who came in. It's listed as caller 13, who's currently muted. So I'm going to unmute you and I'm going to ask if you can identify yourself.
I hope it's me. Is it, Amy? I'm
Yes.
Julie Sharon.
Oh, Julie Sharon, hi.
Hi, I've been trying to get on since about 5 o'clock, and then I thought I'm going to try calling again because I called once and it was all gobbled. But listen, this is such a very important issue that we are talking about, and what I'm wondering is tomorrow at the meeting, are we going to be able to discuss it like you have been on the phone? Because I haven't been able to get on, and I don't know how many other people that have not been able to get on.
Right. Tomorrow's special town meeting doesn't concern this bylaw. This bylaw will be at annual town meeting.
Well, can I just then say that I think it's wrong because too many people have not been able to get, as I say, any information. And it's a very big thing for our community. And I like what Joel said also. It's a big thing how we want to have our town look. I was on the Board of Selectmen when we changed it to the 400-foot frontage. And the reason that we did it at that time was because we had a developer by the name of Coombs who went to all the hill towns buying up as much land as he could. Now, what they did is they put the lots in small sizes, made a fortune, and left all the problem to the towns. And so that is a very big problem. The other thing is on Fritz Road off of Kennybrook. Well, the thing is we had a developer by the name of Fritz who put in many homes there, and the people started demanding to have some work done on their road. Well, the town didn't own it. We had nothing to do with it. There again, I was a selectman at the time. And so what we had to do is have Mr. Fritz bring the road sort of up to code, give the town $10,000, which, we decided that would be fine. And that's how we had to fix that road. And the problem is people on the back roads, they tell you that, oh, it's okay if you don't maintain it in the winter or muddy seasons or what have you. But, once they walk and so on, the next year the town is faced with a petition demanding that their road be upgraded. And so I think it's a very, very big decision, and I don't think we can handle it lightly. Also, the selectmen for many years, I was a selectman 25 years, and we said that anything of this importance, it would be a meeting all itself and not be one that handled at town meeting, because there again, there's so many things to take up at town meeting. This is impending what our town will look like, and I feel that we need a different meeting, not town meeting, because it could go on for 2 days.
Okay.
I hope I'm not too loud,
No.
but there's so many aspects here.
Yes. No, I understand what you're saying. The thing is that this is not the planning board bringing this up to annual town meeting. This is a citizen petition, and the citizen petition, it's basically like calling the question. Having a properly executed petition, we are obligated to put it on the town warrant.
Oh, I understand that as well. And there again, somebody could come up, could vote to say, table it for another time or something. Which
yes,
I think that should happen.
That is possible, but the town would then vote to table it. So that's another.
Oh yes, of course they would have to vote. That's right. They would have to do it the proper way, of course. Yes. But the other thing that I think about, my family moved here in the 60s, and I see the sign coming in, welcome to Worthington, over 200 years of gracious living. And, we've had a wonderful life here in Worthington, and I think your community is as good as its people, and I think we have to really work together. And I understand the young people and how hard it is. I have my own daughters having this problem in other, cities and so on. And I don't think we can handle it lightly, and I don't think the governor can tell the town of Worthington what we want to do. I think we've kind of helped out a little bit by saying that we had a bylaw that said no more than 5 people can live in a home. Well, we've changed that, I guess, because there's more than 5 people unrelated living in some of these places, you know. So I think we have to go slowly. And, you know, I'm all for getting most of the town together. I know COVID, it's very difficult, but these are 2 important issues that we cannot, you know, just hurry up and do it. Mm-hmm. Also, I've been reading where new homes, it's up $56,000 just for the wood. And we had a place in town that people paid $25,000 more than the asking price. So housing is an issue, but we can't take it lightly.
No, I
and
agree.
I'm sorry, I don't want to hog everything, but I couldn't listen to what other people said, and I'm really sorry about that.
Yes, I'm sorry as well. I'm sorry you weren't able to hear it as well, but I will say, Kevin had a comment, so I'm going to turn to him in a sec. But I will say that the governor did change the law, and the governor can tell, you know, I mean, the law was not by the governor, but it was changed by the legislature, which does have the right to tell us exactly what we can and cannot do. And they have dictated that the requirements, the voting requirements for certain things can be changed. But Kevin made a comment. He just said the word no. So I wonder, Kevin, could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, I'd love to hear Kevin.
Yeah, so my no was in the response to Julia, with all respect, we can't open up discussion as part of town meeting on anything that's not in the warrant. We do have the, I call it the news and notes section in the beginning, and the last meeting we eliminated that. We eliminated anything ceremonial. We're going to be operating under COVID requirements again with the governor's guidelines. So we want to open the meeting, get through both this one and the one on the first, and get through the business as quickly as possible and disperse. We will be wearing masks. We will be socially distanced. And I'm going to be asking people to come in an orderly way and leave in an way, because we have to. So I think what Joel is recommending and what you're hearing from others is the establishment again of, if not a 2020 forum, but just a look at all of these issues, not in a town meeting, but in a town hall kind of way, workshop kind of way, to review all of these issues. So I think my comments about the flexible part of the zoning, I think that's got to be better understood. It is prohibitive in a lot of ways, but I think it was an attempt to deal with the situation you're dealing with, or future. But so I understand the desire for more homes, for more affordability, but I think all of it, it requires more talk, because it just has more impact on other parts of the zoning.
Yes. Well, I appreciate that very much, Kevin. And, you know, I just love Worthington, and I just hate to have anything ruin it. Do you know what I mean? We're so fortunate here. And I can understand everybody, but let's come together, as you said, and try to be sensible about it.
Okay. Julia, I don't want to cut you off, but I do know that Nat and Krishna Gifford would like to say something. I'd like to let them do that. And then, so let's have your comments, because after this, unless there are any other comments to be made, I think that we can close the hearing part of it, and I would ask the planning board to stay, because we have to discuss our report. However, once the hearing is closed, there won't be any more public comment. But
okay, thank you.
Sure. Go ahead, Nat and Krishna.
Oh, thank you. Tina, I want to first say I empathize with you more than you can possibly imagine, because you're a person trying to do the right thing, being hamstrung by a rule that was designed to prevent the wrong thing. So with that said, I have to admit to a certain amount of ignorance about how the procedure for some of these things go. So my question, I guess I would direct it to Amy. When a variance request comes in, is there a specific group of rules that you follow with whether or not you approve it?
Well, most variances are granted by the Zoning Board of Appeals and not by the Planning Board. So
Yeah, I'm going to be done with this.
I can't quite answer that because I'm not on the ZBA, but I know that they do grant variances on things. I mean, I think to some extent it would depend on how much of a variance are you looking for? You know, so if we have the rule says 400 feet of frontage and you come and you say, I have like 380 feet, we're talking 20 feet, it is a much more reasonable thing to say, we could grant a variance for 20 feet or less than it is to say we're going to grant a variance for 100 feet. I don't know how they would greet any of these things because I'm not on that board, and we don't work that closely together. There were a couple of things. We last worked closely together on the cell phone tower on Old North Road. That's the last time we really talked about stuff.
Right.
So I can't answer that for sure. I'm sorry. It would be a question.
That's okay. I guess my reason for answering that question is I completely understand and I'm actually in the camp of I really don't want to reduce the zoning law, but I understand that there are certain circumstances, and I also get the fact that we're dealing with a Pandora's box issue here. You know, you can't legally grant an exemption to one person and then deny another person. You have to be consistent with the circumstances. I'm just wondering if there's a case where, being that this is a transfer of property from parent to son or daughter, that if we can't come about this a different way to say, okay, no, we're never going to let a developer do this, but there is a circumstance where this could happen because, you know, without opening that Pandora's box. I guess that's, I'm trying to, I empathize with Tina, and in this specific circumstance, I have zero issue with this variance. And I'm a staunch proponent of keeping the 400 feet because I love Worthington the way it is too. But this is one of those cases, like I said earlier, that they're being hamstrung by a rule that was never designed to prevent them from doing what they want to do.
Kevin said he can speak to the variance issue. So I'd like to let Kevin speak to that. And then after Kevin, Isaac. And then after that, if there are no more comments, I want to close the public hearing part. But let's get Kevin.
So I'm not on the ZBA, but I've been in front of them twice. So I had to familiarize myself with the process, and the process is circled around a hearing. And at the hearing, you present evidence as you would in a legal case, shall we say, of why you want a variance for a particular zoning bylaw. So in one case, it was in South Worthington, which I think has been identified as a cluster of homes built very close together. It's its own little community, and the owner of a home wanted to add a garage, a sleeping porch, and a stair. And the wording of the zoning says that there's a 40-foot setback. And there's another line that says, or in conformance with the surrounding property. So my reading of that was, if the house is within the 40 feet, and we're adding within that 40 feet, it's still conforming to what already exists. So that was the leeway we had. And I made the point that all of the houses in South Worthington are built within the right of way. A lot of houses across from the airstrip are built within the right of way. And if you don't allow this case, as the previous caller said, if you don't allow this case, then nobody, and I think in the center of Worthington, it's the same thing. If you don't allow them to build within the 40-foot setback and you're putting aside the line about or conforming with what exists, no one in South Worthington, the center of Worthington, could ever add to their houses. So that was a case where the zoning is still, and this goes back to let's look at the whole zoning, because that is not a clear yes or no. So in that case, what I prepared was the drawings, the site plan, and we didn't have architectural drawings yet, it's just site plan approval, showing the position of the house, the position of all the other houses in South Worthington, some of the ones in the center, and then based on photographs, how you would see the addition from the road, et cetera, and so forth. So the process is you make the case for your individual variance, and they vote on it that same night. So I think the process is you make your case as clear as possible, what you're doing, why it's not in conformance, why you think it should be allowed, and they take a vote. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Isaac, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I have a bunch of things I want to say. I made a mistake of not introducing myself when I spoke earlier, and I'm a relative newcomer to the town. I live on Scott Road. Actually, Kevin's was just describing my mother's house in South Worthington, and I live next door to my brother Evan Spring, who's here on West Street. So, and I bought my place in 2013 and moved here a year ago and was voted onto the planning board. I like overall, the housing affordability is a really big problem. I just read today that we saw a 17% year-over-year increase in median home value in the last year, which is the largest increase in the 100+ year recorded history. And this is one of the big motivators for the law that Amy has referenced a couple of times, that was passed by the state legislature and signed by the governor, and did make it easier to allow for growth in a smart and sustainable way. I think in this particular case, Kevin was talking about the process for a variance. The planning board, this issue, the Tina and Alex's request for a subdivision was brought to the planning board because initially it seemed as though they may be able to get in with an approval not required. And that's when this doctrine of merger surfaced. And it turned out that under this obscure doctrine, what their parents had thought were being held as two separate building lots had actually become one, without their knowledge, just through the passage of time. And, again, I think we want to be judicious in, we hope that the Zoning Board of Appeals is judicious in the variances that it grants. And we would like to avoid having them do that, presumably, but that is what they are there for. They are there to grant variances. And so, I myself expressed, and a number of other people expressed during the planning board hearing, that, this seemed like a pretty fair case because, this would create two lots that were, shy of the requirement and not too far off the requirement. And, they had sort of unwittingly been the victim of this obscure state doctrine. Now, I can't speak for the planning board, but, and they would have to make their case on their own. But I personally think I would hope that I would get a fair hearing if I were in their case and would have a compelling case. I think I echo, as far as changing the law for frontage, I really echo the folks who have asked for more time to consider frontage, along with a number of other changes to our zoning laws that would allow for sustainable growth. One of them that was mentioned was the the accessory dwelling unit. Another option could be overlay districts to allow for different frontage sizes, different frontage requirements in different parts of town. And that was presented in Tina's slide, where she referenced some neighboring towns that do have a residential district and then a non-residential district. We could also look at the flexible development requirements and make them more easier for individual homeowners to take advantage of if there are challenges under the current requirements. But I do think that I'm a relative newcomer. We've heard people speak about wanting to keep the town as it is. Certainly the reason that I came here, I'm very much a newcomer, was because of its nature. And so I do believe that we have a number of tools in our belt. I spoke with the executive director. I recently joined the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission as a commissioner. I spoke with the executive director. They are happy to help out and lend their expertise to helping the town look at its zoning code holistically and seeing what the options are to promote the kind of sustainable growth that we want for the town and that we need for the state, that we're being asked to do for the state and that we really need to do as a country, but to do so in a judicious and thoughtful way, considering a range of options that we have available to us. I should say that as far as the specific whether a simple majority applies in this case, I'm looking at whether a simple majority or a supermajority applies in this case. I spoke to the executive director of the PVPC about this. She said that the governor didn't want any restrictions on the simple majority, and the legislature introduced the specific terms contrary to the governor, so that those were not, in her her understanding, and she's not a lawyer, but her understanding was that those were not just examples, but actually specific limitations that were set at the by the legislature in contravention to the will of the governor, or what the governor wanted, in order to allow for fewer restrictions. And in terms of the documentation that I'm looking at right here from the governor's office, from the executive office of housing and economic development, ultimately, unfortunately, as Amy said, it is we don't have a lot of guidance as to who where to look for the ultimate authority. And so what they've said is the planning board has to make this determination in consultation with town council, and town council did come back and say that the plain language of the law refers to specific parameters that can be changed by a simple majority, and that frontage is not one of them. So that's all I have for this. So thanks very much, everyone.
Okay. I would just want to, let's see, I want to address this to the Lugois, Annie Lugois. You said your sister, Catherine Sharon, has not been able to sign into the meeting, waiting for the organizer, but I don't have to approve anybody coming in. So I'm not sure why she's not able to get in. I'm a little puzzled. Is she joining by computer? Hang on, I'm going to unmute you. Let me just see. No, I don't seem to be able to unmute you. I'm not sure if you muted yourself. Let me unmute all for a sec. Now let me go here.
The only reason that would happen is because she's signing into a different meeting and there's nobody there. So maybe she's signing into a select board meeting instead of this meeting or something. I know we had a bad link out there, but that link doesn't even exist. So
if you can get your sister
in support of what people said, or I would.
The meeting ID is 845-552-877. So if she uses that ID for the meeting, she should be able to come right in. All right. Unfortunately, I'm trying to close the public hearing part of it, so I'm not sure. Do you know of a specific question she might have? Because I do want to talk with the planning board. We do have to write a report. It does not necessarily have a recommendation, but we do have to write a report about that we had this meeting, this hearing, and I think what we do have to comment on is which standard we believe applies to the voting. So the members of the planning board, so I have Susan Warner, who's caller 8. Okay, you're unmuted. I have I'm trying to find everybody. Okay, have Josh as caller 12. You're unmuted. I have Isaac. I have myself. And I believe that's it. I think only 4 of us are here. I am unaware of anybody else being from the planning board. I had 2 callers that I had muted, but caller 9 and caller 7. Caller 7 is still here, but I don't know who they are. Is it Kim Waite by any chance? No, that's the only member of the planning board who's not here. So at this time, I'd like to ask the members of the planning board to kind of let's I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna mute people who are not part of the planning board. Okay, I just have to figure out who everybody is again. It gets a little crazy here. Okay, so caller 4 is not, sorry. Caller 5 is not, that's Phyllis. Sorry about that, Phyllis. Caller 6 is Katrin. I'm gonna mute you, Katrin, just to make life easy. So caller 8 is Susan Warner. Caller 12 is Josh. Caller 11 is actually Charlene, but I am going to mute you there, Charlene. And so I have, okay, and caller 8, I think, is Mark Piaget, and I'm going to, so I think I have the plan. Oh, no, I'm sorry, that was Susan. So there's Susan, sorry. Okay, so I have Isaac. I'm going to unmute you, Isaac, if you don't mind, or you can unmute yourself. So we have to write a report that will be presented at the, I don't think I can unmute you, Isaac. I think you have to unmute yourself. So we have to write a report that's going to be presented to the town meeting. And basically, what I think the only thing that we're going to be, the report will state that we had this hearing, you know, the hearing for the citizen petition was held on this date. Okay, 4/23/21, and I don't know that we want to make a recommendation as to, you know, as to whether we feel that this is something the town should vote yes for or no on. I don't know that we want to make a recommendation, because I really do think that everybody has some pretty good arguments both ways. And I think that the certainly will vote on it and will make their will, you know, they'll make their opinions known. And I think it doesn't require us necessarily recommending it. I know the board, the select board and the finance committee would often recommend things, but that has to do with town budget, that we recommend the acceptance of the budget for, you know, the board of assessors, for instance. But that's not, you know, I don't think we necessarily have to comment on that, but we do have to comment on whether we feel that it's a 2/3 majority or a simple majority. As I said,
Amy,
yeah.
have you ended the hearing?
Yes, I'm sorry. Okay, I thought that was clear, that I am ending the public hearing part of it. So I'm closing the public comment period. However, let's see, hold on a second. Let me just come here a sec. Yeah, that was Charlie asking me. Catherine said the message is waiting. Oh, okay. All right, Catherine, yep, you're in, Catherine was in the wrong meeting. That's the problem. Somehow she's not in the right meeting. Okay, so I apologize, but she wasn't able to get in, but it's because she's in the wrong meeting. So I'm closing the public hearing part of it. And can I get a motion from the, from somebody on the planning board to close?
The motion to close the hearing?
Yes. And a
I second the
second?
motion.
Okay, and the planning board, I'm gonna call on you by name. So Isaac,
Aye.
Josh,
Aye.
Susan,
Aye.
and I vote aye. So we have closed the hearing. I'm sorry, Charlie, thank you for reminding me of the protocols. Closed at 6:40 p.m. Okay. So now we have to write our report, as I said, and so the report is just going to say that we held this hearing for the citizen petition, and that so what I would probably say would be that pursuant to the opinion from town council, which I do have in writing, we feel that or I don't know, it's not really that we feel, but that the voting criteria should be 2/3. It should require 2/3 of approval to pass, and not, we don't need to mention the simple majority, or we can say that it requires 2/3 and not the simple majority. So the hearing for the citizen petition held on 4/23/21. I'm just going to say it elicited lots of response, well, good attendance, actually. I'm very happy about that. This is the first hearing that's had any decent attendance. And good responses. Okay. Do you feel that we should cover any of the points that are covered in this? I mean,
it doesn't seem necessary to me.
No, I don't know that it is either. I think Kevin is already
It's
gone.
a fairly simple question, it seems to me.
So
Amy,
then,
I have the opinion of the town council in front of me. Do you think it would be helpful if I read the relevant portions?
sure, yes.
Okay. Amy, in my opinion, the citizen's petition that you provided requires a 2/3 majority vote at town meeting. Chapter 358 of the Act of 202, Section 19(3)B states in relevant parts, zoning ordinances or bylaws, and I'm going to elide here, but that the simple majority will apply to zoning ordinances or bylaws or amendments thereto that B, modify regulations concerning the bulk and height of structures, yard sizes, lot areas, setbacks, open space, parking and building coverage requirements to allow for additional housing units beyond what would otherwise be permitted under the existing zoning ordinance or bylaw. Council continues, as the plain language of the Act clearly omits frontage, in my opinion, the statute does not provide for the reduced vote at town meeting for zoning bylaws that merely reduce the frontage requirement. That being said, I recommend that any vote at town meeting be counted and recorded in the event of a challenge.
Right. I could include all of that. I think it might throw up a little bit more stuff that might raise more questions, but
sorry, I was just suggesting it I was just reading it for the benefit of the people attending the meeting.
Yes, so I think we will say in our report that the opinion of town council will require a 2/3 majority vote of the town meeting. And I think basically that is what the report will say. Because I don't think it needs to be long and involved. I think it could be simple. We've heard everybody. I assume that when the warrant article is read, that Tina will be allowed to, well, she'll have materials there, and that she will do it again as to why she feels, it could be passed. And at that point, there will be the people at town meeting who did not attend this. So even this was well attended, but this was not as well attended as town meeting will be. So many people there will not have heard her presentation. So I think that I'll just make it short and sweet.
Amy?
Yes.
Is it possible that the report could suggest, I would like to suggest that the report suggests to the town that the planning board would like to consider changing frontage along with other zoning bylaws and return to town meeting with those, return to the town with those changes together at a future date.
Yeah, hang on one sec. I'm just going to write.
Consistent with some of the sentiments that were expressed by a number of people at the meeting who were interested in taking a more measured approach. I mean, there's certainly there is a crisis of sustainability, but a lot of changes happening all at once. You know, we just got broadband in the town, and people are moving out of the cities, and so suddenly there's much more demand for property in this area. You know, changing the zoning bylaw is something that it would be very, very difficult for us to change back, changing any zoning bylaw. And so I think that the planning board, you know, the planning board serves the town in the interest of, you know, of having sensible zoning bylaws. And I think that it's consistent with that the planning board would recommend that we would like to take such a sensible and measured approach, and return to the town next year with a more comprehensive zoning package.
Yeah, I want to make it actually a little bit more concise. So I would, planning board would like to consider changing frontage as part of a more measured approach to be presented to annual town meeting at a later date.
And or we could have a special town meeting, which was what I think Mrs. Sharon had recommended, to allow for a more comprehensive discussion. So maybe that could be part of it, to say this would be presented at a special town meeting, allowing for more input from townspeople at the time of the voting.
I would not want to do it at a special town meeting, because those are historically not as well attended. In fact, this 400-foot frontage was passed at a special town meeting. As I said, there were only 51 people there. Peggy, you have something to say?
Yeah, I just want to point out, you know, this is a big issue and you're getting a lot of feedback about it. It could be a special town meeting all on its own. We did the school as think of the school vote, you know, that was a big deal. So I wouldn't rule it out.
Okay. To a town.
If you're gonna make a statement, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Either way, it's in the future.
Statement like this, you are in essence taking a position on this warrant article, and if that's what you want to do, fine. But don't say this and then say you're not taking a position, because you are essentially saying, don't pass this because we'll consider it later.
Right. That is what I believe. I believe the planning board should take that position.
And that's fine, but that's what you should say.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to pull anything sneaky here. I think the planning board should recommend that the townspeople not vote in favor of this, and instead, in changing frontage at this time, but instead consider frontage along with other zoning bylaw changes that would allow for smart growth, while considering, you know, while taking a more considered and measured approach. That's what that's what I think the planning board should do.
Right. I understand your point, Charlie. I don't agree with that. I don't want to make a recommendation to either pass it or not pass it. I think we need to just let it stand on its own. And if people want to pass it, they will. And if they don't want to pass it, they won't. If we just simply say the town council says that this requires a 2/3 majority, and we leave it there, I think that we can leave it that way. But we can certainly take a vote, or I can poll all of you. So I will ask Susan, do you feel that we should just, do you feel that our statement should just basically end at the point where we say that pursuant to town council, the citizen petition will require a 2/3 majority vote, and just end it there? Or do you feel that we should actually offer an opinion as a recommendation whether to pass it or not?
I think I'd go with a simpler statement. I feel like there's a lot of discussion. There's going to be a lot of discussion anyway, so I don't feel like we should get too involved.
Is there going to be a lot of discussion?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Because we'll have far more people than we had at this hearing. So, yeah. And
everybody,
there's going to be a lot.
I'm sorry, Peggy, what did you say?
I said, so everybody should bring some snacks.
Yes, bring lunch. Do not come without
Bring
food.
dinner. Bring lunch and dinner.
Unfortunately.
I don't think you're going to need breakfast for the next day, but you know, especially if you have low blood sugar issues, bring something to eat. So Josh, I just want to ask you, how do you feel about, do you think that we should do the recommendation or not?
Yeah, I think we should go simple. I don't think we should make any promises because we can't even, we can't even guarantee the makeup of the planning board in the future and when we're going to be able to tackle these things. So I think all we need to do is say that it really, we're of the opinion, and it's been backed up, that we need a 2/3 vote. And
Okay.
yeah, it seems pretty clear. It's unfortunate. I don't understand why the legislature would say all those things and not include road frontage, because road frontage absolutely impacts the additional housing availability. But in any case, that is the town council's correct. It seems quite clear. So
Okay. All right. So I think, Isaac, I won't include that in the report. I will just end it at the point where it's required 2/3 majority. And I think basically at that point, we can close our meeting. I don't have the exact wording of the report, but it's basically going to say that the hearing for the citizen petition was held on this date. It elicited good attendance and good responses. Pursuant to town council, the citizen petition will require a 2/3 majority vote to pass, for passage.
that sounds good.
Okay.
And
good,
by the
Amy.
way, Isaac, just I agree with everything you're saying. I think we should consider it and do all that stuff. I just don't think it needs to go in the report. That's all.
Right, definitely. I was actually very pleased with your conversation with the people at the PVPC that you would like to work on doing a more comprehensive and more considered approach to it. I'm actually very happy with that.
Yeah.
So for Tina's sake, it's possible that if this gets voted down, that there will be something coming within the next year that might allow you to still be able to build. And you can consider going for the variance from the ZBA as well. You can talk about that. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you would do the variance from your original proposed ANR of 400 feet and 300 feet, or how you would do it, but you could certainly do that. Charlie, did you have something you wanted to say in all this too?
I was just going to say, obviously, as individuals, Isaac, you can certainly express that opinion at the meeting, and you can identify yourself as a planning board member and all that.
Right.
Got it.
Okay.
Yep.
So if there's no objection, I would like to consider closing the planning board part of the meeting as well. Can I get a motion to do so? Peggy is laughing at me.
I move to close the planning board portion of the meeting.
Seconded.
In favor?
Josh has got my back.
Aye.
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 Okay. So at 6:54 p.m., it's a long evening. Okay, we closed the PB meeting. All right.
Great.
Good job tonight. Really good job.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much, Amy. Thank you, Amy.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Amy.
And we will schedule another meeting of the planning board at some point in the future because we do have to talk about, future of who's going to be the chair, but that's for another day. For now, we just end the meeting and we go relax. And don't
Friday
forget, tomorrow, we have to be at the special town meeting at 9, you have to be there a little bit before 9:30 because we're basically presenting 2 planning board items.
Great.
Right.
I can't wait. See you guys tomorrow.
Right.
Bye-bye.
Thanks again.
Good night. Bye.
Holy Jesus.